There's always an audience group called the Reluctant Husband. They always start off with the arms folded. And then in the end, they are windmilling on the dance floor, just having the best time.
Welcome to the Lighter, Darker podcast, where we talk about the creative process of filmmaking and the art of visual storytelling. Thanks for joining us for episode 18 of 20 that we've planned for our first season. And we release these every other Tuesday. Great to have you with us today. My co-host today, as always, is Todd Vaziri.
Hey, I'm Todd Vaziri, compositing supervisor and artist at Industrial Light and Magic.
And our producer, Jenny Ely.
Hi, I'm Jenny, a production manager at ILM.
And I'm Rob Brado, the SVP of Creative Innovation at Lucasfilm. And all of us work together in the visual effects, animation, and immersive entertainment industries. And today we have two very special guests with us. Let me introduce first Svana Gisla. Svana has produced many of the iconic music films of the last 20 years, from Kylie's Can't Get You Out of My Head, David Bowie's Black Star, so many shows. And she also, most recently, produced the epic immersive experience, ABBA Voyage. So welcome to the show, Svana.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. What great company to be in.
This is going to be a fun one today.
Yes.
And we're also joined by Ben Morris, creative director of ILM's London studio. He began his career working on animatronics at Jim Henson's Creature Shop. Or maybe that's at least the first thing I have down, Ben. Maybe you did something before that. But he won an Academy Award and a BAFTA for his work on Golden Compass. In 2017, he served as VFX supervisor on the Oscar-nominated Star Wars Last Jedi. He also supervised ILM work on ABBA Voyage. So we have two of my favorite people to talk to about the show and two of the preeminent experts on putting this show together. So thank you for joining us, Ben, as well.
Hi there. Nice to see everyone.
Ben just buried me in the credits there.
No, I'm doing all I can, Svana, not to fanboy over Can't Get You Out of My Head music video. I love that video so much.
Do me that
My
one.
whole family
And David Bowie.
I mean, Bowie. That's the one I'm most proud of, I have to say.
Yeah, you beat us all with David Bowie.
Yeah.
Well, I'll take it. I need something.
So today for the show, we're just going to talk very simply about kind of origin stories. What got Svana and Ben into this business to begin with? And then we're going to spend most of our time talking about immersion in ABBA Voyage and some of the craft behind the scenes and some of the magic that takes place in that show. And if you haven't seen ABBA Voyage, I guess by way of introduction, I should just say right up front, or maybe Ben and Svana should introduce it. It's an immersive experience where ABBA puts on a concert as if they're in their 20s, but you can see it in a real venue in London, and it's a new form of entertainment. Nobody had ever tried anything like this, certainly not at this scale. It was very, very ambitious, and it's been very successful. Now we're coming up to, is this the second anniversary of it already? And it's almost been sold out the entire time?
It's the third.
Third anniversary already.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if I did a good job introducing. For people who haven't seen the show, Svana, is there any way you want to, can you do a better job introducing it than I just did? Because it's hard to explain, isn't it?
I really can't. I've tried so many times and I fail every single time. It's a concert, and it's a concert that was 40 years in the making. And the making of that concert was as audacious and daring as we could possibly make it. And it was a lot of fun. And thankfully, people are still enjoying it, and we keep going.
Yes, it keeps going and keeps evolving. Ben, in terms of getting started in your career, maybe just in general, I know people want to hear about Henson's when they hear that's on your resume, or maybe some of your Oscars. But tell us a little bit about what got you into this to begin with.
To clarify, so the first thing I ever did was build miniatures for Muppet Christmas Carol.
Nice.
At Henson's. So I built fir trees, Dickensian buildings, and all sorts of stuff like that. So that was totally cool. And they sponsored me through university. I kind of went along to a little presentation they did at the British Film Institute. And they were wonderful. And I went up at the end and going back even further, 1977, I went to the cinema. I walked in and I saw Star Wars, and I walked out and I turned to my mum and I said, I'm going to do that. and I was 7 years old, and that's where it all started. So anyway, I then jumped to being a sort of crazy teenager, building models, blowing things up, having Super 8 cameras, shooting videos, film actually at the time, and just doing everything, mucking around in the back garden. And the Henson guys were great. I used to do horror makeup for Halloween and stuff. And they finally said, stop destroying your parents' house. Come and see how to do it properly. Nice. So they were amazing. They gave me a leg up, and I owe it to them where I am now.
That's amazing. And what was your first job then that was kind of into the digital realm where you are primarily working today? I know it's still a mix and a hybrid of the real world and the digital today, but
it occurred I did the first Babe film. When was involved in all the animatronics and control systems, and then we went out to Australia and did the second Babe film. And I actually went to see the second Jurassic Park. Obviously, I'd seen the first one. I was kind of like, that's cool. And seeing the second one in Sydney, halfway through shooting Babe 2, I couldn't have said, the way those creatures move is just so different and real. And so that was the point at which I decided to try and retrain. So I started the Babe 2 on the animatronics side, and I finished it at Milfilm in the digital side as a junior artist.
Amazing. And Svana, I understand you have always been connected to music and these music stories that we were talking about in your bio. But how did you get into this in the first place? What was your connection to the industry?
Well, I just completely winged it, to be honest. I was raised in Iceland, and back in the 70s, because I also lived in the 70s, or maybe actually it was probably more like 82, 83. There was a TV show on Icelandic television, and just to say, Iceland at the time had one television channel, which was run by the government. And it was didn't broadcast on Thursdays because the staff needed a day off a week. And also they broke for summer holidays at the month of July. So it was very cozy. And once a week they had a program called Skondrock where they played music videos. And I just completely fell in love instantly, and I managed to find one friend in my class called Sonia, whose parents had a VHS machine. So we started recording them, and I would just devour it. It just became an absolute obsession. It was my link into the big wide world, I think, and it was always music videos. And then as soon as I finished school, I moved to London, and I wanted to work in the industry, and managed to get the lowest possible position at Oil Factory Films on Caledonian Road in London, which was making the coolest music videos in the world at the time. And a year after that, I got a phone call from RSA, Ridley Scott Associates, saying, would you come and run Black Dog Films, which is their sort of new music video division. And I did that for 16 years. And then came Bowie, and then came ABBA. So I've done no films, no TV series. I've done none of the cool stuff that you've done. I've just been a music video fanatic all my life.
And then you went from music videos, which are productions unto themselves, but they're relatively compact schedules, they're relatively short, to more than 1,000 people working on ABBA. I'm sure ABBA Voyage had more employees than the entire TV station you grew up watching. I mean, the scale of the project was enormous, right? From end to end. Was this the first time taking on something of this scale for you?
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely.
Kind of for everybody.
I'd done documentaries, and I'd done projects that went on for maybe a year or so. Big stuff like On the Run with Beyonce and Jay-Z for HBO. I was probably on that for almost a year. So I'd done big things, but this was on another scale. Although when I humbly walked into ILM in London to Ben with my storyboards. Not my storyboards, our storyboards in my bag. I had no idea what we were about to do because none of us really understood what it was going to be. We just took one step at a time and figured it out.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I wanted to say about special venue projects as opposed to short films like music videos or movies. It's a totally different world in that it's so hard to explain, especially when there's a facility involved. The venue is being built as you guys are creating the imagery. I recently had the chance to go see the Sphere in Las Vegas. And Sphere is a little bit easier to describe, but any one of these special venue things, whether it's like Rise of the Resistance or an amazing special venue for another theme park, and ABBA Voyage, like how it's hard to describe, and that's what makes it so special. It's like this is very different, and it seems like ABBA Voyage is one of those things where if you have a chance to see it, you need to take that opportunity. You need to go see it.
Yeah.
Is that do you find that to be the case?
I mean, I'm obviously going to say yes to that. You have to come. No, but the building part. I mean, that was the tricky bit. We've all made sort of films, short, long, big, small, but I've never built anything. I don't know anything about. It's a nightmare. And if you have ever built anything, you know what a nightmare it is. And obviously, we had the best team around us, architects and stuff. But at the same time, the building was built around the show. So you're kind of attached to that process as well.
Yeah.
So there were lots of different plates spinning and a lot of time in previs, feeling nauseous with those goggles on, trying to sit somewhere in an auditorium and not be sick. And, oh yeah, this is going to be great.
And I think my memory of it was, it wasn't a linear process. As in a lot of creative processes, you sometimes have to go in a circle to actually prove that where you started was a good place, or actually halfway around you fork. And I remember those design sessions that we went to, Svana, talking about, hey, is the shape of the building a circular thing? Is it a hexagonal thing? Is it this? Is it that? And I think to be very honest, the collaborative spirit, nobody had done it before, but nobody was pretending that they knew everything.
No.
Everybody was just trying to contribute and say, hey, have we thought about this? Or did you realize if we do that, it's going to affect that over there? And, even things like the sounds, Svana, with the screen. And it's kind of like, well, how do you make perfect sound at the same time as perfect picture? Yeah. And all of those.
Yeah. And how do you make it look good wherever you're sitting or standing in that 3,000 arena,
Yeah.
And there is a certain element to some of this, which you put your sticks in the ground because you don't really know where they're meant to be. So you collectively put the sticks in the ground, hoping that the whole thing's going to work together. There is an element of luck in there somewhere, and an element of just, it was just sort of meant to be, if that doesn't sound too spiritual. There was a part of this for me as a producer and my co-producer Ludwig. We just tried to get everything out of the way, just to kind of clear the road so the train could, the kind of bus could keep moving and get the skeptics and the naysayers away as far as possible, because all we had was this optimism and team spirit that this crazy, audacious, ridiculous thing was going to, recoup.
It's so, in hindsight, it's been sold out for now nearly 3 years. And people can't say enough good things about the show. Everybody goes every night to have a party, or 2 times a day to have a party in there and watch a concert that feels like a live concert. And it all works amazingly well. The audience brings it to life. But it's easy, it might be easy for some people to forget. I'm sure it's not easy for you two to forget. This was 4 or 5 years, started before COVID. So you're making a show where 3,000 people are going to gather in person during the time of social distancing and a lot of anxiety. It's being created during that time. It's not an inexpensive show to put together. Very, very complicated visuals, very high-end construction, all these things. There were a lot of things pushing against it. And I think, Svana, what you were just saying, you were trying to keep that out of the way so that the creative could continue to thrive. Yeah. And that's, I think, what comes through in the show. At least when I sit in the audience, it feels like the show was built by a bunch of fans and people in the band themselves, the 4 of them, feeling like they were passionate about making something and putting on a show every single night, which they couldn't physically do today in their age. It comes through as like something, it's almost a gift to the audience. And of course, everybody wanted it to make money and be as successful as it has been, but it feels like the heart of it was really the creative and the feeling that they wanted to express, which is, I want to put on a show again like we used to.
Absolutely. There was no financial incentive in making this at all. Quite the opposite. There was more thinking like, how much money can you guys actually afford to lose? so we can have a go at it. You know, it really genuinely was like that. And when we did the motion capture in Sweden, in Stockholm in February 2020, you know, I don't need to remind you what happened in March 2020. Right. There was a lockdown on a worldwide scale. We had just, with our partners in Sweden, finished the investment pitch. So we were pitching, you know, for the bulk of 140 million pounds on Zoom during COVID, trying to sort of say to you, give us all this money so we can build this thing where people have to come 3,000 at a time, 7 times a week, and then you might recoup in 3 years. You know, it was insane. Right. Someone should have said, you need to stop it. You just need to stop. No one did. No one did.
We thought what we thought. I mean, it was literally, we didn't even know if people were going to gather in the way they used to gather.
No.
It was absolutely one of those drop dead, oh my goodness me, is this totally the wrong investment to be doing?
It was the wrong investment. And remember, Ben, we were meant to do the second mocap in April.
Yeah.
Obviously, we couldn't do that. And then we bought our own COVID testing lab.
That's right.
So we could have people in the office, and we had a nurse come every day and COVID test everybody. And then we managed to get the shoot together in September. And that was a miracle, because there was a pocket around autumn where the lockdown lifted, and then it came back in December. So, like I say, there's a lot of luck involved as well. So there was a world where we couldn't even finish making the show because we hadn't finished shooting. And mocap shoots like that, I mean, they're 200-300 people.
Yeah, and it was also, it was a huge risk with the COVID happening, but funnily enough, there were so many unknown things that still needed resolving that we actually used the time when COVID actually reduced our efficiency in working together. We used that seemingly to solve all the problems that needed to be solved to be effective when we finally hit the ground running. And I think we don't need that. We don't need that runway anymore, because we learned and we understand all that stuff now. But at the time, it was a blessing in disguise, even though it was a huge risk, I think.
I think our director, Bailey Walsh, was incredibly grateful for the extra 3 months to work out what the show was going to look like and what was going to happen. There was also another thing that you Americans maybe don't have in the forefront of your minds, but we definitely did that thing called Brexit. That was also enormously helpful, especially in the import of goods and services whilst building something. You know, that was great. And then there was a thing, remember, in the Suez Canal where a ship.
Yes.
We were right behind that with our sound insulation from Melbourne.
That's right, I remember.
That got there like 3 weeks late, and we couldn't open without it. You know, there was like, and we had a fantastic project manager on the build called Chris Hay, and I think he did not sleep for 3 weeks. He was just reading Suez Canal news like it was the last thing that he depended on. So there was lots of sort of funny little things like that.
I think it was last week's episode of this podcast, we asked Janet Lewin, who's a producer, you know, someone asked a great question of Janet Lewin, which was, when you're trying to schedule something that has so much innovation in it, how do you even approach that as a producer? And she had a response that was terrific, because it's not just about scheduling as a producer. It's about all the other things around it and bringing the teams together and collaborating across the departments to figure out what the new plan is. And sometimes every day you're dealing with a new plan. It sounds like what you're describing kind of lines up with that. You have to constantly be fielding these things as they come, because you certainly can't schedule around the Suez Canal being open or not.
No, absolutely. No, totally. And just, I think, you know, the team spirit is a remarkable thing. You know, when you have a group of people that just pull in the same direction every hour of every single day, you sort of you start believing after a while that you can do anything. And you need that kind of, you know, that kind of audacity to climb some of these mountains, because you have to believe that there is no way you're going to fail.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'll the doubt will spread and everybody starts questioning everything, and then it's done. It's finished.
So you created this culture on the show that made the impossible possible, and that's actually what the whole team did. one of the magic moments for me watching it, and this is something that Ben was talking about well before there was even a venue to go to, was the integration between the practical lights and the actors, the digital actors and real actors, of course, on stage, the real cast on stage. Can you talk a little bit about the revelation and the aha moments behind that, the importance that lighting integration was going to have, and then maybe a little bit about practically how you pulled that off, because that illusion is so successful. I sat in the theater with a bunch of people who are experts about immersive technologies and immersive shows, and I remember like 3 songs in, they're like, okay, I get that's digital, but what about that? Yeah. And I'm like, well, I don't really want to give away the magic, but yeah, it's digital too. And then what about that? They're looking at lights that they think are practical, but they're actually digital. So it fools even an experienced eye, I think, even 20 minutes into the show.
Well, it fooled our lighting riggers, because when we were putting up the trusses and the lighting grids, a couple of times they went up to the grid to try and change a light bulb, and then realizing that it was in the digital grid.
Oh, it was one of Ben's light bulbs.
Ben sitting back quietly giggling.
Yeah. Ben left the light flickering. He sat there rubbing his palms and chuckling away. But, do you remember that, Ben?
I do. They actually said if we left it, and they said if we left something on, and it was just like, no, don't worry, we'll switch that off. That's in our world.
It's in the media.
Yeah.
No.
But I don't know. I mean, to me, sorry if I'm jumping in, but I think the first thing that I found most interesting, and it was a really strong instinct from Bailey, was he didn't want to use traditional staging in the sense of flats and staircases and all of that sort of dimensional stuff. He felt very strongly that light should form the structure and scale and the space in not just the arena, but the screen. And the great thing about that was, if we could establish identical looking light in that whole space, you only ever think of it as one space. It's not 2 spaces, and the screen suddenly sort of dissolves and is no longer a barrier. You don't want to think about that. And I think the more we put onto the screen and the more we learnt about that, I'm going to admit there's a screen, the more we learnt about it, the more that sort of recipe worked really effectively. And there are lots of different sorts of lights going on in the show. There's traditional lighting instruments from rock concerts. There's some that have never existed before. There's kinetic sculptures. There's lasers. You're really mashing it up, but they exist in both spaces, so the audience feels part of the concert. It's not like you're in a football stadium or a larger building where you're kind of in the dark space and all the fun stuff happens in front of you. The fun stuff's happening on top of you, behind you, around you, everywhere, and in front of you. And I think to me, that resonates. And a lot of people talk about that as much as the fact they're actually seeing ABBA, which I think was a big success.
Then you guys took it further, so that the digital light that's bouncing off the physical stage then bounces light back into the digital stage. So totally. Then your mind just goes, I don't even know anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
An example of that is we spent ages. There are lasers in the show. I'm going to give it away. There are lasers in the show.
Ben, you need to. Someone put a muzzle on Ben here. You won't need to go after this.
No. So, and then it happens at about this point. No. And give him a shout. I can't. It's Michael
Solinger. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a crazy German laser specialist. He's got a laboratory underground somewhere in Berlin, and he's a great specialist in lasers.
He blends colors. He makes the lasers blend. Sorry, Ben, go.
No. So he did all this amazing work, and the lasers are in the around the audience during the show. But at the same time as that, there's the characters, the digital versions of ABBA are wearing a futuristic outfit, similar to you might have seen in the Tron movies. And there's some black acrylic plates that are highly polished and sort of hugely reflective. And so whilst we never actually generated lasers that you see in the virtual world on the screen, we actually had to generate them because they have to reflect perfectly in time and color with everything that's going on in the arena. And so when we sat there, we almost wanted to show people that we'd worked out how to create digital lasers, even though they only just flash every now on these lapels. So every now and then, if I'm allowed, I sneak out and say, look, here we go. This is us matching a real laser to a digital laser. But it's tiny little things like that actually people, they feel, but they don't they don't. It's not so that you feel it, and it feels right, but you're not actually. It's not blatant in terms of your recognition of it.
It's people are listening to this highly collaborative world that needs to be integrated between the physical world and the digital world. They're probably picturing, in this 4 or 5 year schedule, you had 2 years in the venue to fine tune this thing and to try things out and see what worked and what didn't. But it was actually nothing like that. You had to do all this planning digitally and in the Avid and in headsets, as you were describing, because when you walked into the venue, you only had it for not very many weeks before the show was live in front of real audiences, right?
No, they were still building it when we went in there. We were fighting the hammer knocks next door. I can't remember how many weeks we had then. Did we have 6 weeks?
I think 6 or 8 weeks, but it was hilarious. Every now and then somebody would shout, they're in the roof,
Yeah.
everybody clear the floor. So
we had to put hard hats on and run away.
Yeah.
It became a construction zone again.
It was a total
during your
construction
loading time.
zone. Yeah.
And I learned the rule that content and media tends to be elbowed to the end of the day or the middle of the night. And that was, but that's apparently normal in the rock and roll world. You get the big heavy guns in and the forklifts and the big machinery, and then the content can happen.
The lighting guys like to work at night, I think.
I know they do.
They love it.
They like a sort of takeaway supper, and then let's get on with the work.
2 a.m. start. They love it.
The problem is we've been working since 8 a.m.
I know.
You have to get on that evening schedule.
Yeah.
One of the things the show does so well is pace itself. It's an hour and a half of rock concert, and it feels like 2/3 of the way through, you're still revealing new tricks. New things are happening, media showing up in different places, lights that you haven't seen are doing cool new things you haven't seen before. It seems like it required a lot of constraint not to use every trick in the book in the first song, and the show doesn't do that. It really keeps building and surprising you throughout. I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about the evolution of that, because creatively I thought that was so satisfying and successful.
I mean, that was all our director Bailey. I mean, he had pretty much free reign on that, apart from the set list, which came from ABBA. I think with anything that you do, when everything is available to you, which it sort of was for us, it all becomes an exercise in restraint, because you can't keep throwing things at it. More isn't necessarily better. Just because something's available to you doesn't mean, you're bettering anything. So that was, I mean, if you agree, Ben, I'd say that was absolutely Bailey. And then you have to remember, you've got that music. And some of those songs, I mean, let's be honest, you could just play them and sit in a black room and you'd feel something. You would cry. Don't even need to turn a light bulb on. And if you start there, you just have to pull a little few threads and, it's all about the emotion. And of course, we go for it in other songs. I mean, it rains disco, but in other parts, it's allowed to be a bit more quiet. Don't you think, Ben? I mean,
I totally do. And I think there's, I think less is more is absolutely where it was at. And there are lighting instruments and very special pieces of special effects in there or something that are only used in one song. And you could look at that and say, well, we've paid for it. Now let's use it in 8 of the 22 songs or whatever. And it's the fact that they have unique characteristics that keeps it in such a rich visual experience. If you just kept cranking the handle, same lights, same sort of effects, I think people would get bored and saturated. So that restraint is great. I mean, it means that the ceiling is about to collapse because there's so much technology in it.
645 tons.
Yeah, and
645 tons of instruments up there.
Yeah, in the grid above the audience. Yeah, it's.
My goodness.
And so somebody came and said, well, could you change it up? And could we put some new stuff in? And we all looked in the roof and just sort of went, no, there's no more more room up there.
There's physically no more room.
The German engineers, the German guys that supplied some of our German lighting systems, they thought the Japanese had done the grid because it was so neatly arranged.
Yeah.
It looked so beautiful.
The other thing that we did in order to make, because in our film world, sometimes you overdress, you do set dressing to make it look cool, and you know, particularly in science fiction and the like. And so we'd dressed all the cables around our virtual digital trusses and stuff, and little LED lights that show that a lighting system is working and everything. And the lighting designer said to me, I'd be fired if we ever rigged that at a real concert. You never point the LEDs towards the audience. You hide them to the back so that so the roadies can see when something's gone wrong and it's flashing red. And you definitely don't loop the cables around. You tape them on the back. So we were breaking all the rules to make it just look a bit cooler.
Can I ask about, coming from a music video background and a film background, there's certain concrete foundations that we rely on. We rely on the frame. We know what the aspect ratio is of the frame. We know that all eyes are going to be on that frame. We rely on a consistent frame, 24 frames per second. We rely on that there's going to be cuts. We can start a shot, the shot will have a beginning, middle, and then we're going to cut to something. Something like this, when you're building an entire concert where you are, your resolutions are out of control, your frame rates are out of control, there's no such thing as a cut. You don't know where any one audience member is going to be looking at any one time. How was that a difficult transition from coming from these other backgrounds, or did you guys did it click really quickly in terms of working on the storytelling of it all?
Svana, I don't know if you want to talk to the storytelling. I can talk to the internal.
No, go for
challenges.
it. Go for it.
Right on the money, Todd. Right on the money. It was a learning experience, and when you go to a concert, you kind of just take it for granted what you're seeing in front of you. What you don't realize is that there's an online editor there and probably a camera crew of between 10 to 20 cameramen hidden away, and somebody's cutting endlessly. And so for us, the linear edit never existed. There was always what we called the life-size digital characters, and they have to sustain. There are no cuts there. You can't hide a simulation in 5 seconds and then cut to another. And the frame rates that were required meant that if we did multiple songs in a row, it was tens of thousands of frames. That your hair simulation, your beautiful flowing golden locks can't go wrong. You can't have a bad hair day halfway through a song and do a reset. So that required lots of different restructuring in our pipeline. But then also the fact that you could have not just one image per second in the show, you could have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And in fact, there's one beautiful song where mirrors are involved as well. And so for us, it became this incredible multi-dimensional sort of montage of time, where you'd have IMAGs, you'd have secondary projection surfaces, you'd have additional even mirrors going on. And it actually meant, that we had to be very careful, not just the fact we didn't have cuts to escape from things that might be challenging when you do them for longer than 5 or 10 seconds. You would be looking front on at somebody in the live action section, but a camera that is functioning on the IMAGs, which are the big screens to the left and right, and IMAG stands for image magnification, that camera might be looping around that person. So you're actually seeing things on the reverse side of them that you'd never see in a cinema shot. So we had to make sure that the characters were utterly perfect from every direction, because there were 5 or 6 additional cameras covering that footage. So in essence, we learned an awful lot, and we made a new pipeline with a special tool called Super Trooper, which was a way for us to manage vast amounts of multiple rendering. But to Svana's earlier point, we just rolled with the punches. We knew that we didn't know everything, and when you know you don't know everything, you have to be open to making things up. And the team were incredible. And we learned with Svana, Ludwig, and Bailey, hey, God, we hadn't thought about this, but we now need to refactor how we're looking at this song. And that rippled through all the way through to the teams in ILM, and the lighting designers and all the other people involved in the project. So yeah, it was a complex jigsaw, but we just I think Svana, you described it. You just cleared the runway, and everyone just had to work out how to drive down it. And that was very much the attitude for the whole show.
I remember a very awkward moment maybe awkward isn't the word. Maybe I thought maybe we were staring down the end of the road in that moment where Ben and Sue Lister said, so when are you delivering your storyboards? And me and Bailey looked at each other and went, what are you talking about? It's a concert. There's no storyboards. And Ben's face just went white. And he sort of went, yeah, but how many frames are we doing? How are we going to, what are we doing? I said, well, we'll figure it out. But it's a concert, Ben. We can't storyboard it.
I also talked about directing pop stars and rock stars.
Yeah.
And Bailey just went, Ben, I got to tell you something. You don't direct them. They're not actors. You don't tell them they've got it wrong. They are themselves. They do what they do. And so, yeah, I was certainly learning.
Well, and to that end, as you were doing the mocap sessions, you were actually not only getting the performances of the original ABBA, but also the four of them, but also camera and other takes. And not that would be the only thing that you would use, but that was the initial driving force to be able to put together what the show was going to feel like, to make it feel as authentic of a live show as possible, right?
That pertains to the sort of storytelling part of the question, I guess, which is in the mocap, we had a full live camera crew and we shot it like we shoot concerts. I mean, I just told you about the Beyonce Jay-Z tour that I did, the DP there, Per Ekberg. I brought him in and he brought 5-6 cameramen and steady cams and cranes and everything. And we just shot the performances like a concert. And then Bailey edited the IMAX and stuff when needed from like a little list that ILM gave me, which is you can afford 7 shots with one person in them. You can afford 3 shots with all 4. And then it was the head scratcher for Bailey and the editor going, how many shots with 4 people have I got? That was the storyboard processes, really.
It was in the edit after the shoot.
Yeah, well, that's how we figured it out, what we could afford to do. Because obviously, every single frame of that VFX with those 1,000 people that you mentioned, it's money.
And I think we work with actors on film sets all the time, and one of the talents of an actor is to perform without referencing the camera, unless specifically that is for an effect. And it's an incredible skill actually to be able to do that. What I learned in these concerts, and when I watch concerts more and more, is there's still, don't look down the camera, but there is a ballet between the camera person and the artist, and they really work together. A guitarist going into a guitar solo with a camera person is looking up at them. They both know that they're there. And even if they're not staring at each other or winking at each other, they know they're making a cool shot. And the same is true of a vocalist or a pianist. And to see this camera team step on stage, they took everybody's performances to another level. Because as soon as you stepped off the stage and the performers stepped off the stage and looked at it, they kind of got energized by it. They were thinking, even though we're in this crazy, slightly abstract world of a capture process, that they could see the basis of those final rock and roll pop shots in the raw footage. And I think that took everybody, I took a huge sigh of relief, but I think also all the performers actually really dug into it at that point and went, yes, I get this.
And I can't really not mention Wayne McGregor just in this part of the conversation, because his choreography and what he brought to the table in terms of the physicality of those performers becoming ABBA. Yeah. He also knew that there was going to be a he also understood the assignment. So there are a lot of genius sequences there that Wayne just blows one's mind when someone of that caliber comes and does a silly little show with people like us and, tears himself away from the Royal Ballet for a minute. I just had to mention him in this context because he was unbelievable.
And he also, for me, he honored what ABBA were. ABBA weren't gymnasts when they were younger. They were a Swedish band who performed in a very honest way. They were musicians as much as they were performers, and I think Wayne took that and expanded on it, but didn't go bananas. Do you know what I mean? One of the worst things you can possibly do is create a digital version of a person, let's say, and take them out of the performance or expression space that the audience is used to seeing them in, because then immediately the audience says, this is wrong, this must be false. And I think Wayne was very clever at being able to expand and bring even more excitement into those performances without breaking it.
That's one of the things, I think that's one of the notes that gets hit so perfectly in this show. It honors the legacy and the authenticity of ABBA. So you really are watching an ABBA show, but you're also seeing it imagined through a new lens with today's technology, with a concert that's being put on as if it's the biggest concert of the year being done right now in 2025. And to be able to respect the legacy and lean into the new technology and new approach and to get that authenticity in there at the same time, I think it was quite a balancing act. I'm sure it was a balancing act. A balance you had to strike the entire time.
It's like you built a time machine, but instead of taking the audience back in time, you took them forward in time and said, let's make the best show we could possibly make with them from the past. And amazingly, we've talked this entire time, and we haven't even gotten into the nitty-gritty of the digital humans from top to bottom, these big performances. Digital humans, including their costumes and jewelry and makeup and everything. I mean, what were some of the, it sounds crazy. What were some of the challenges of creating authentic digital humans, especially of people who have, are in the zeitgeist? People know what an ABBA performance is like. These are extremely photographed people performing for decades. What were some of the challenges of creating fully digital versions of these performers? The everything?
Well, no, I think we can safely say nobody done it before. So again, but we knew we wanted to do it to the best of our of our abilities. But I think even the real basics, and Svana, you'll remember, but there are certain pop acts, rock acts who have been going for 40 years. ABBA were active for about 10, maybe 8 or 10 years. Yeah. And even finding within those 8 years the ABBA that is in the show took time. And the more you look at people and the more the fans know those people, they changed from being in their, I think they were sort of mid-20s when they first hit it with Waterloo, and then going into the mid-30s. All sorts of different things were happening through their lives in those 8 years. And what we had to do with the help of Svana and Ludwig and Bailey was narrow that down, because initially the brief was, we'll just make ABBA. But actually, if you look at photos through those 8 years, they're extraordinarily different, even though they are the same people. So for us, rather than sort of losing our direction and sense of direction, we had to narrow it down almost to a period which I think was 76. It was in between
79.
79.
Summer 79, I think we put the pen down. And that was to do with some people liking their hair in that time. And it wasn't the girls.
Yeah.
And so, but I would say we did a number of things that were wonderful that helped the digital process. Svana and the team got some incredible costume makers in. They also got hairstylists, and we did everything that needed to be digital for real. So we got real costumes made, and we were able to take those apart and look at the patterning and look at all of the crystals and gems and lovely stitching that was occurring. And that gave us a target. Though it was what we tend to call it a blueprint build at that point. The creativity has actually occurred in creating the real object. The digital version of it is then a facsimile of that. That doesn't mean that we didn't make slight alterations in the process. One of the heavier capes that is worn, it would have actually physically been quite hard to dance in. But because ours are digital, they don't weigh anything. And so we can make it look and feel it any way we want. So that was great. And the hair, we spent a lot of time on the hair. I would say that the guy who had the easiest hair was ultimately, I think, Bjorn. I think Benny had a few iterations and the girls had quite a few. But it again comes down to when we do film shots, a long shot is 15 seconds. Here we're talking 6 to 8 minutes of continuous simulation. So, and the digital characters, by way of being captured, their hair was actually dealt with and constrained. It was held back, so they didn't have the natural instinct to come up and clear their face. So we actually animated moments like that to bring some of that reality back into the process.
Love it.
So, and it was just an awful lot of hard work and collaboration as well. It wasn't just the London studio was the main hub, but we had Singapore, we had Vancouver, and we had a small team even in San Francisco who was involved. So it really took a village.
So when you have made an incredible time traveling concert, in real life, when rock bands go on tour, they go from city to city, venue to venue. The set list changes. There's a basic show, but there's a slight alterations, and particularly like when there's a residence at a particular place, the show evolves over time. Are there any plans for ABBA Voyage to do something similar?
Yeah, I think they would be very silly if they didn't consider some sort of an evolution. And I think the word on the street is that something might change in the set list potentially. They're keeping their cards very close to their chests. So we'll have to see on the 3rd anniversary on the 27th of May. But I think, and I'm going to speak for you too, Ben, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. We will keep going as long as people keep coming. I mean, I would happily keep evolving this show for a decade if the investors keep sending more money and people keep coming.
They've got a big catalogue. Let's put it that way.
There is at least 50 number one hits that I'm exaggerating. Wow. No, there's at least 40 songs that we didn't tap into, right? So there's definitely gas in the tank, for sure.
That's for sure. Yeah, it's such a fun show. And even if you think you're a casual ABBA fan, or maybe you mistakenly think you don't know that many ABBA songs, you're going to be shocked when you go to the show that every single song is a song you know, or just about every single song is a song you know. And man, we've talked a lot about the show that is in front of the audience, but the show that is the audience, the way the venue is designed to bring them in, the way that everyone is wearing sequins, not everyone, but a good percentage of the audience is wearing sequins and is there to enjoy a rock show together. I mean, they bring the other half of the performance in a way, and the way the dance floor was designed. I mean, everything was designed for this experience to be a lot of fun as a collective.
It's absolutely amazing. The audience is phenomenal. And listen, I must have seen the show 300-400 times. I've never seen the same show because the audience brings something. The show on a Sunday afternoon is different from on Friday night. I mean, every morning, though, when the cleaners come in, it's like a fox got into the chicken coop. There are feathers and sequins everywhere. But there was a risk to have the dance floor, you see, because, they're digital constant. Like, people really have to buy into it, right, to be on the dance floor. And we needed that energy of the dance floor. And I think it was our first preview. We did 3 or 4 previews before opening night. The first preview was a 50% capacity, and we only invited the local residents, just the people that lived around the arena, because they'd been watching the spaceship being built for about a year. So we invited them, we letter dropped them, and they came. And not ABBA fans, not particularly wanting to be there, didn't pay for their tickets, just came to sort of have a skeptical look and very much arms folded. And, it was a tough crowd. And then when ABBA came onto the stage in the first song, what happened was the people on the floor rushed towards the stage.
Wow.
And I think you could hear the collective sigh of relief coming from us, echoing all over London. I mean, it was a shoulder drop like I've never experienced. And we just, me and Ludwig cried. I think it was just, we knew it was going to work, you see, just in that second. When they ran towards the stage, we thought it's
amazing too, the range of fans that you see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was surprised when I saw it. You go to a concert from a band or an act that and you kind of know what you're going to see in the crowd. You're like, okay, this is what you're going to see at a Metallica show, or if you go to like an R&B show or whatever, like just the general age, whoever like grew up with whatever. But going to ABBA Voyage, when I was in the middle of the dance floor and looking around, and it was every age range,
Yeah.
men, women, everybody partying together, everybody dressed up, and everybody loved the music. Like you said, whether you think you're an ABBA fan or not, when you get in there, it's just a great show, no matter what kind of music you like.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, my kids are 18 and 17 and 19. They're playing ABBA in the clubs. You know, they finish the night on Gimme, Gimme, Gimme. Like, the kids are still...
Poppy, my sister, she's up in Newcastle. No, my sister, what am I saying?
She's
My
your daughter.
She's going to think that's funny when she hears that. No, she's just finishing off in Newcastle. She said they play Gimme Gimme 3 times on a Friday or a Saturday night.
Yeah.
It's just pumping.
Yeah.
And they're all getting...
They're up, kids in their 20s, you know, straight men in groups. They're having the best time, you know. There's always an audience group called The Reluctant Husband. They always start off with the arms folded and they go, how long am I going to have to stay?
Totally.
How many times am I allowed to go to the bar? Is it really going to be finished by 10:30? And then in the end, they are windmilling on the dance floor, just having the best time without fail.
And they're the ones running to the merch table.
Yeah.
Gotta say, it is so much fun. The show is so much fun. The first time I went to see it, I had seen the media. We'd sweated every detail. Ben and team had sweated every detail, and when it got extra stressful, I got involved enough to where I knew the show pretty well. So I went as the careful observer because I just wanted to see technically how everything came together. And during the first song, as ABBA's starting to come out of the floor, I'm like, why are tears coming out of my eyes when I knew what was going to happen? I know every magic trick, but it is just so emotional when you get everyone together. And I was there by myself just to observe, and I just had so much fun. We should keep talking about sequins and immersive entertainment for another hour, but what we do need to draw this podcast to a close. So we'll end very appropriately on the Martini, which is the last shot of the day on a film set, but a perfect way to end a podcast on ABBA Voyage. So, Todd, did you bring us the Martini today?
I sure did. If you're like me, your friends and family come to you for tech buying advice. What gadget should I buy? What should I buy? The headphones, computers, whatever. And if you're in the Mac world, the Apple Macintosh world, for laptops, it's been a little bit difficult to make a quick and easy recommendation for what to buy. There's a lot of variety in the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro lineups, which is good. It's good to have variety, but it was so hard for most people to just make a quick, easy recommendation of what to buy and when to buy it. Well, a couple of months ago, Apple released the M4 MacBook Air, which is confidently the laptop that most everybody can use and enjoy for a long, long time. It hit that $999 US price point, which is really fantastic. It is way more powerful than almost anybody needs. Obviously, when you get into the pro needs, you might want to bump the RAM, you might want to bump the storage, but for almost everybody, the MacBook Air is the right choice and the easy recommendation. In fact, I just put in an order for my first laptop I've ever bought. I've always used desktops, and this was just so attractive to me to have a good portable that is super powerful that I know will last a long, long time. So the new MacBook Air M4 is my Martini.
Thank you, Todd. Ben, did you bring a Martini today?
Blimey. It's it's not a technical Martini. No, my advice, I was just thinking, no, look, I'm going to recommend something that actually we as a company have a slight relationship to, so maybe this isn't appropriate. No, I've just finished watching all the series of the TV show Severance, and I just want to say it's probably old news, but I've just been utterly blown away by it. It's absolutely wild. It's beautifully designed, filmed, formed, everything. I haven't felt TV feel like that in a million years. Yeah. And so I'm just going to say, if you haven't seen it, if you're one of the 2 people on the planet who haven't seen it, quickly check in and watch it. It's beautiful.
Isn't it incredible? The pacing of that show, it's so patient because it knows that you're just waiting for it to deliver.
I say to everyone, you don't give up. Just keep with it and keep pushing through. Anyway.
It's in some ways, it has some similarities to ABBA Voyage because it's a high concept sci-fi original show that is not guaranteed to work, and it works incredibly well. And just like ABBA Voyage, not guaranteed to work. If the audience didn't bring it every night, it wouldn't have been the same thing, even if it was technically impressive. And then there's that magic that happens. I feel like both of these things. I think it's a great example. Ben.
And if you try to describe it, both projects, you get a little flummoxed. It's very
you got to see it.
Yeah. And it's got some cool music as well. Defiant jazz. Now my family knows what Defiant jazz is.
Who did the music? Do you know?
Oh, they've got some music consultant. They play all sorts of music.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Jenny.
Yeah, so my martini this week is an author. I was going to try to pick one book by this person, but I'm just obsessed with consuming everything by this writer right now. So I am a big fan of psychological horror. I love horror novels, anything that's psychological thriller. And recently I've been reading Paul Tremblay, who's an author from New England. He's sort of in the vein of Stephen King, where everything I've read so far takes place in New England, and there's a little bit of interconnectivity in the stories. But his writing is so good. The pacing is amazing. The stories unfold in ways that I've never seen anything unfold in psychological horror before. And it's funny. The narrators for the audiobooks are fantastic. If you want to start somewhere with his books, I would go with Head Full of Ghosts. It is incredible. It's my book to beat this year for my favorite book already. So I would start with that one. Everything I've read by him is good. He does short stories as well. So Paul Tremblay, check it out if you're into horror.
Great. We'll link to that in the show notes. Thanks, Jenny. And I was going to add on to Ben's. We are doing a future episode of this podcast on Severance. So something to look forward to. ILM Visual Effects supervised and did a bunch of work on that show. So that'll be, I think Jenny, is at our next planned episode. It's coming up soon.
Yep, it'll be the next one.
Excellent.
Cool.
Svana, did you bring a martini or do you want to pass?
Do you know what? I will just take a real martini right now because it's 6 o'clock in the UK. And I will also take a little share of Todd's Apple vouchers that he's about to get sent for him for that.
I wish. Perfect. Yeah.
I'd like to, I'd like a cut in that, please, Todd.
Okay. If any come, I promise I'll let you in on it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'd like to get one of those, Apple things.
That's perfect. My martini today is a show called Game Changer, which is a game show where the game is different every episode, and they don't tell, the guy who runs it, Sam Reich, doesn't tell the players what the game is, and they have to discover it as they go along. Dropout is a channel where it's like a subscription service. I think they've got 8 or 10 shows on this service, and they're really all very, very funny, like Game Changer is. Game Changer is, it's not really about who wins the game. It's really about how much fun these incredible improv comedy actors can have putting together a game show that is new every time, and it's all improvised. It's very, very funny. I think Dropout costs $5 a month here in the US to subscribe to. And you might wonder if it's worth $5 a month just for a subscription, another subscription for like another 20 or so shows. But the small team of people makes a lot of really fun shows. Another show on this service is called Dimension 20. So if you know what a D20 is, the dice that are used for role-playing games, then this is for you. If you don't know what a D20 is, then I'm geekier than you, which is probably possible. But yeah, I highly recommend Sam Reich and Game Changer. So thank you, Ben. Thank you, Svana, for joining us on today's episode of Lighter Darker. We're really, really happy to get to talk about ABBA Voyage, and congratulations again on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to the Lighter Darker podcast. If you've got a question for the show, drop us an email at lighterdarker@ilm.com and visit ilm.com/lighterdarker for our social media contact, as well as the transcripts and all the show notes for this show and all the shows we've done so far. If you like the show, like and subscribe, do all the right things. Leave us a comment on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, and please let your friends know about the podcast. We want to thank Industrial Light and Magic for hosting the Lighter Darker podcast. The show is produced by Jenny Ely and myself, Rob Brado. Today's episode has been edited by David Dovell, and we want to thank ILM's PR team, led by Greg Cresby, who work behind the scenes to make all of this happen for us. So thank you again for listening to the Lighter Darker podcast. Until next time, may your pixels be both lighter and darker.